February 1945, Iwo Jima lay under a low, gray sky, its volcanic slopes silent, its ash drifting in the wind. Japanese soldiers waited in concrete shadows, breathing dust, listening for the sound of engines. Takahashi Toshiharu crouched inside his bunker, his eyes fixed on American armor creeping forward, his breath slow and controlled in the choking air. For months, his unit had trained without rest, studying every weakness of the Sherman tank, drilling with lunge mines and satchel charges in the dark. The lead tank halted beyond his reach, too far for a suicidal rush, yet close enough for the 47mm gun hidden nearby to strike. Then the world changed in an instant. The tank did not thunder with a shell. Instead, a river of liquid fire surged forward through the air. The flame rolled like living water, orange and black with smoke, pouring into the neighboring bunker without warning. Screams tore through the stone. Voices vanished into choking heat. Takahashi pressed himself into the earth as the fire raged beside him. That night, he wrote of darkness filled with smoke, of air turned to shadow, of a fire that erased the world before his eyes. He lived through that day by chance, while most of his comrades did not. A new terror had announced itself on the battlefield. What he witnessed was the first appearance of America's most feared weapon in the Pacific War, a tool that would soon redefine siege warfare. In the months ahead, this weapon would clear fortifications faster than any method before it, leaving defenders with no answer and no refuge. Worse still, the men who faced it never saw the danger until it was already upon them. General Tadamaki Kurabayashi arrived on Iwo Jima in June 1944, carrying a single purpose within him: to exact such a price from the invaders that the road to Japan itself would seem unbearable. He was no ordinary commander. He had lived among Americans. He had studied their factories, their logistics, their endless capacity to produce war. Kurabayashi understood with painful clarity that Japan could not match the enemy in open firepower, nor win a battle fought by tradition alone. So he rejected tradition entirely. He refused to fight a war the old way. He studied the disasters of earlier islands, from Tarawa to Saipan to Peleliu, tracing the same fatal pattern again and again. Japanese forces rushed the beaches, seeking honor in open charges, only to be cut down by naval guns and aircraft in merciless waves. Kurabayashi chose a different path. There would be no mass charges on Iwo Jima, no meeting the enemy at the shoreline, no ceremonial deaths in the open. His men would fight from beneath the earth, hidden from the sky and the sea. For 8 relentless months, thousands of soldiers carved the island from the inside, chipping tunnels into volcanic stone with bleeding hands. 11 miles of passageways twisted through the rock, though the original plan called for more before bombs interrupted the work. In places, the tunnels sank 7 levels deep, forming chambers large enough to hold hundreds of men in silence. Hospitals with operating rooms lay 75 feet below the surface. Command posts were linked by miles of wire, running through total darkness. Above ground, more than 1,000 fortified positions scarred the island, each bunker wrapped in concrete thick as a man is tall. Steel doors opened only to spit fire, then slammed shut against return fire. Every position overlapped another. Every slope and hollow was swept by carefully measured arcs of fire. The brilliance lay in the connections. When one bunker fell, its defenders slipped away through tunnels and rose again behind the attackers. Hours of bloody progress could be undone in minutes, as guns reappeared from beneath the ground. Kurabayashi had transformed 8 square miles of rock into a fortress that mocked the assumptions of modern warfare. American intelligence predicted the island would fall in 5 days. It was a forecast built on confidence and on habit. Before the landings, the island endured the heaviest bombardment of the Pacific War. Weeks of bombs tore at the surface. Thousands of tons of explosives churned the rock. Then battleships added their thunder from the sea. Smoke swallowed the island whole. Fire rolled across every ridge. Planners assured themselves that nothing living could remain. Yet fewer than 200 of the fortified positions were destroyed. The tunnels beneath were almost untouched. Most Japanese soldiers were unharmed, sitting in the dark and waiting, following Kurabayashi's exact instructions. Let the Americans land. Let them advance. Let them believe the bombardment had done its work. Then strike from every direction at once. On February 19, 1945, the first waves of Marines came ashore, boots sinking into black sand beneath open skies. For a long moment, there was silence. An unnatural stillness, the kind that makes men believe the danger has passed. Thousands of hidden gunners watched through narrow slits, hearing voices and footsteps, yet holding their fire with iron discipline. When the trap was full, Kurabayashi gave the signal. The island erupted in sound and flame. Artillery roared from Mount Suribachi. Machine guns burst from unseen bunkers. Mortars rained down on every marked yard of beach. The sand trapped vehicles. The terraces halted tanks. The Marines found nowhere to hide. By nightfall, thousands were dead or wounded. The advance measured only hundreds of yards into the island. The battle settled into a nightmare of caves and bunkers, each cleared at terrible cost, each reclaimed from below in moments. Portable flamethrowers helped break some positions, but their operators were forced dangerously close, burdened by heavy fuel, hunted by snipers. Within days, commanders searched for anything that might shatter the deadlock. A new weapon was already on its way. 5 months earlier in Hawaii, Colonel George Unmacked gathered a small team in secrecy, working under the Chemical Warfare Service with a single aim. His task was brutally simple to describe and nearly impossible to achieve: burn defenders out of caves without sacrificing American lives. Man-carried flamethrowers worked, but the men who carried them died too often, forced into the killing zone with little protection. Unmacked needed reach, endurance, and armor, all combined into one platform. The answer lay in steel tracks and thick armor. Fire would ride inside a tank. Earlier attempts had failed, plagued by short range, limited fuel, and crippling breakdowns. So the team began again from nothing, building a weapon the battlefield had never seen. They stripped 8 Sherman tanks of their main guns, replacing steel barrels with flame projectors disguised to look the same. Inside, hundreds of gallons of thickened fuel waited under pressure, ready to surge more than 100 yards in seconds. Around the clock, the builders worked, sleeping beside welders and wiring boards, shaping hundreds of custom parts by hand. By early January 1945, the tanks were ready. From the outside, they looked ordinary. Inside, they were something else entirely. When the flame tanks reached Iwo Jima, commanders hesitated. There was no doctrine, no manual for such a weapon. The crews learned by doing, rolling forward against bunkers that had defied hours of shelling. At one position, the tank halted beyond the reach of enemy guns, then unleashed a 4-second burst of flame. Liquid fire poured into the firing slit, stealing the air from every lung inside, ending the fight in moments. Word spread along the lines. The flame tanks could do in seconds what companies of infantry could not achieve in hours. Japanese defenses, built to endure bombs and shells, crumbled before burning fuel that clung to concrete and crept through every crack. Fire flowed into tunnels. It raced through chambers. It consumed the oxygen from sealed spaces. Those who survived the first heat often died gasping in the dark, as the air itself vanished around them. The sound of the weapon became terror in itself. A roaring hiss echoed through tunnels like a living thing breathing. Veterans remembered that sound more than the sight, because it meant death was already on the way. Captured officers later admitted their men fled positions at the sound of approaching Shermans, not even waiting for the flames to come. One American officer, Fred Caldwell, witnessed a final act of desperation. A lone Japanese officer charged a tank with only a sword in hand. He ran screaming across open ground, honor driving him forward against steel and fire. The tank crew turned the projector. The stream of flame erased him before he could take another step. Caldwell later said the sight stayed with him for years. He understood the truth behind it. There was nothing else the man could do. No tactic remained. No defense could answer a weapon that killed from such distance. Takahashi Toshiharu recorded another fate. His unit was ordered to charge a Sherman with satchel charges in hand. The tank stopped beyond their reach. Then Marines collapsed the cave entrance instead of firing. Buried alive in darkness, air fading with each breath, Takahashi clawed through rubble with his bayonet while others pushed debris behind him. Hours passed in suffocating blackness until only one of the 8 emerged into the open again. After the war, British analysts measured the terrible efficiency of flamethrowers. They found surrender far more common than death in their wake. This was terror given form, a psychological weapon as much as a physical one, breaking wills where bullets could not. Kurabayashi's fortress had been designed to defeat shells and bombs. It had no answer for fear itself. The 47mm guns could pierce a tank at close range, but the flame tanks never came close enough to be struck. Suicide charges with mines required crossing open ground under fire, a journey few survived. The flame tanks exploited the final gap in Japanese defenses, killing from beyond the reach of any answer. Their deception was complete. They looked exactly like ordinary Shermans, their true nature hidden behind false barrels. Defenders prepared for cannon duels, only to meet liquid fire in the first instant of contact. The first shot decided everything, and the flame tanks always fired first. On Okinawa, entire battalions of Shermans were converted to this role, burning through the Shuri line in months of brutal fighting. Casualty ratios reached levels unseen in the war. Thousands of defenders were killed or captured, while tank crews suffered minimal losses. Fuel flowed in staggering quantities across southern Okinawa, as caves and tunnels became ovens beneath the hills. One of the builders later said they achieved in hours what weeks of conventional assaults had failed to do. Kurabayashi died on Iwo Jima in March 1945. His body was never recovered from the depths of the island he had transformed. His strategy worked against every weapon he had prepared for. The bombardment failed. The beaches became killing fields. Casualties mounted just as he predicted. Then the flame tanks arrived, and the tunnels meant to save his men became their graves. In sectors where the tanks operated, American losses fell sharply, while thousands of Japanese soldiers died by fire or suffocation. The men who operated these weapons rarely spoke of it afterward. Many carried the memory in silence for decades. Kurabayashi had built a fortress for the wars of the past. He could not prepare for a weapon born in secrecy, forged not for conquest, but for terror.